Hi everyone, I'm Pranav from Prepco. Welcome to the sixth lecture of the legal reasoning series. In today's lecture, we will be solving the CLAT 2020 question paper, the legal reasoning section of the CLAT 2020 question paper. Uh, so in this lecture, so in this year's question paper, this was the first time in which the new pattern was introduced. That is the passage-based question paper pattern for legal reasoning. So it was quite a lengthy section. There were a total of 8 passages with 4 or 5 questions on each passage. So as you can see, it was a lengthy section, as we will see going forward. So let's jump into the first passage. Also, if you have been following the legal reasoning series and you've seen the first 5 lectures, a few passages I have already solved in the earlier lectures as examples. So if they were related to contract or torts or criminal law or constitution, I've used them as illustrations in my earlier lectures as well. So I'll just be repeating them in case you haven't had a chance to see the earlier lectures and you just want to see the solution for the CLAT 2020 paper. So I have included them again. So let's jump to the first passage. The first passage reads that the COVID 19 pandemic has taken the entire world hostage in less than 4 months, and the global economy has been hit the hardest, with governments across the globe implementing stringent policies, including lockdown to prevent the coronavirus outbreak. The pandemic today presents unprecedented challenges and impediments to businesses in conducting their normal operations. The lockdown across the world has caused delays in the performance of contracts and transactions. Now, the question that arises is whether the current situation can enable parties to a contract to alter their obligations with non compliance of terms, neither being regarded as a default committed by any party nor breach of a contract. There are certain well accepted practices for dealing with such extraordinary situations in commercial transactions by the inclusion of force majeure and material adverse effect clauses. Determination of the types of circumstances so covered by the force majeure clause contained in a contract is essential. Provisions of force majeure often cover natural disasters like hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes as acts of God. Other covered events may include war, terrorism, civil disorder, fire, disease, medical epidemics, or by reasons of applicable laws or regulations. Broadly, the courts have interpreted the term force majeure as an event that can neither be anticipated nor controlled by either of the contracting parties. A force majeure clause applies in the context of ongoing contractual arrangements, whereas an MAE or material adverse change clause applies to the allocation of risk in transactions before their closure or completion. Pandemic and related consequences such as government action is a type of event covered by a force majeure clause. However, its impact on the affected party's ability to perform its contractual obligations may vary depending upon the contractual terms. It is common for force majeure clauses to specify the impact that the event or circumstances in question must have in order for the clause to be triggered. References may be made, for example, to the event or circumstances having prevented, hindered, or delayed performance. These terms require different levels of impact on performance before a party can claim recourse to these clauses. In other words, the force majeure and MAC clauses act as an exception to what would otherwise be treated as a breach of contract. Certain contracts may state that if a force majeure clause is applied, the contract may automatically be terminated. On the other hand, some contracts may even state that the duty to fulfill the contractual obligations may be suspended for a certain period of time and if the force majeure event is not curbed or treated even after such time, then eventually the contract may be terminated. Though there cannot be a one size fits all solution to this question, and it depends upon how the force majeure clause is worded in a specific contract, in the absence of the same, applicable laws related to the same will be required to be taken into consideration. Yeah, so this was the passage. I suggest that this you should follow the practice as I've been saying throughout. Pause the video here, look back at the passage at your own pace, and then cull out the important points that you can find from the passage. And then compare them to the ones which I have pulled out, and that is how you will improve your skills. So let's move on to the important points which we can see in this passage. First, it says that force majeure clauses cover acts of gods and other extraordinary situations like wars. Now, courts have interpreted force majeure as an event that can neither be anticipated nor controlled by either of the contractual parties. Force majeure clause applies to ongoing contractual arrangements, whereas the material adverse change applies to allocation of risk in transactions before their completion. So basically MAC will apply in terms like if there's a merger between two companies going on, and before that merger is completed, the Indian government comes with a big policy change. So if that is changing the allocation of risk between the two companies who are going for that merger, that is a situation that an MAC will cover. Next important point is the impact of the clause can vary depending on the contractual terms. FM and MAC act as an exception to breach of contract. The effect of an force majeure clause depends on how the clause is worded. And lastly, in the absence of force majeure, applicable law will be seen. So let's move on to the questions which were there in the 2020 paper. So first one is based on the author's argument in the passage above, which of the following is correct? Option A, force majeure clause generally have a uniform impact on the performance of contracts in all cases. B, the impact on the performance of contracts by usage of force majeure clause is dependent upon the way such clauses have been constructed in a particular contract. C, both force majeure and material adverse change clauses have similar impact on the performance of the contract. Or D, all of the above. So what according to you is the correct question? So if you remember the important points, this is a very simple question because only one option is correct. Two you can disregard just as that. The correct option is option B, because first one says force majeure clauses have a uniform impact on all cases, which is what the author has told us is not the case, and force majeure and material adverse change apply in different circumstances and have different impacts is also something which the author has repeatedly said, and we have culled out in our important points. So correct option is option B, because it says that the force majeure clause depends on the impact of the clauses depends on the wording of the clause in the contract. So that is why option B is the correct option. Let's move on to the next question. Now imagine there is a domestic commercial contract for supply of certain goods for certain price between A and B. However, in pursuance of the same, both A and B forget to negotiate and agree on the terms of a force majeure event, and the contractual document does not contain the force majeure clause. In such a situation, what would be the fate of the contract in an event like that of COVID? Option A, as the parties did not negotiate on the force majeure clause, either of them cannot take an exception to the breach of contract. Option B, the parties can invoke the material adverse change clause. Option C, in absence of such clauses in the contract, the courts may resort to the applicable law, that is, the Indian Contract Act 1872, to give relief to the parties. D, none of the above. So again, if you just refer to the important points in the which we have culled out, this is an easy question. Just take a minute to attempt the questions, and the correct option is option C, because the last point tells us in the absence of a force majeure clause, the applicable law will have to be seen. So the applicable law in India is the Indian Contract Act 1872, which is what option C tells us. Hence option C is the correct option. So let's move on to the next question. In the same fact situation as mentioned above, with a modification that there is a force majeure clause in the contract between A and B, and let us suppose that B, who was to supply goods to A on certain date and time, faced issues in relation to procurement of goods due to a mill strike and also because of a rise in prices of goods. In this case, can B claim the suspension of performance of contract on the basis of force majeure clause? So let's see the options. A, yes, B can, depending upon the way the force majeure clause is worded. B, such situation cannot be covered under force majeure as it is just a case of disappointed expectations, and hence B cannot invoke the clause. It is merely a case of commercial hardship. C, B can invoke the force majeure clause as the clause is too broad to cover such situations. D, none of the above. So this is a little tricky question. They are asking you to apply your mind here. You have to apply your mind to the facts given. So again, just take a look at the important points which we have culled out, and the answer you should be able to get the answer. So just attempt the question, and now let's see what the correct option is. So the correct option is option B, because as the point 2 of the important point tells us the circumstances that force majeure clauses covers. The passage tells us that force majeure clauses cover situations such as an act of God, like an earthquake or something. But the facts of the question is actually merely a case of commercial hardship. There is just a mill strike. There is no act of God, right? So thus option 2 is the correct option. This is why we have to look at the when you attempt any question, just look at the important points which you have pulled out from the passage, and most of the times the answer will stare at you in the face just by looking at that, and this is how you apply the important points to a given factual situation. Correct. So let's move on to the next question.
Hey guys, just a short break in the middle of the class to tell you to check out our website or follow the link in the description below to join our test series. We're going to be having sectional tests, full tests, a lot of practice material. Do check out our website. Cheers.
So typically the material adverse change provision in an agreement contemplates events which, if they occur or are likely to occur, would have a materially adverse change or effect on the assets, business, property, liabilities, financial condition, results, operation of target, or that affects the ability of the transacting parties to consummate the transaction, or the validity or enforceability of the transacting parties to its rights and remedies under the transaction documents. Which of the following sample clauses in a contract resembles an MAE clause? So let's look at the options. A, in the event either party is unable to perform its obligations under the terms of this agreement because of an act of God, strikes, equipment of transmission failure, or damage reasonably beyond its control, such party shall not be liable for damages to the other for any damages resulting from such failure to perform. Option B, except with respect to payment obligations under this agreement, no party shall be liable for, nor such party shall be considered in breach of this agreement due to any failure to perform its obligations under this agreement as a result of cause beyond its control, including any earthquake, labor problem, or unavailability of supplies. Option C is both of the above. Option D is none of the above. So here, just take a look at the question and take a look at the important points, specifically the ones in which we have pulled out the explanation for material adverse change clauses. So what are material adverse change clauses according to the contract? So because of that, the correct answer which you should have gotten is option D. Now this is because both option A and B are not dealing with the risk allocation between the parties, which is an essential of material adverse change clause, as can be seen from the important points. These two clauses are an example of force majeure clauses, as they deal with circumstances which are beyond the control of the parties, and on the happening of the circumstance, the parties are not liable to pay damages etc. to the other party. So this is in a material adverse change clause, the clause would deal with a risk allocation that in case a certain situation happens in the future and that changes the risk that I was willing to take, then I can pull out from the deal, something like that. Correct. So that is why A and B are not examples of a material adverse change clause. So let's go to the next question. Now this was the end of the passage 1. Now we move on to the second passage. Now the issue of obscenity has vexed the courts in India and abroad for a long time now. The intriguing question has always been the same, that is, what should be the standards to qualify something as obscene in the eyes of law? In the United Kingdom, way back in 1868, the court laid down the Hicklin test in the case of Regina versus Hicklin, and it held that the test of obscenity is whether the tendency of the matter charged as obscenity is to deprave and corrupt those whose minds are open to such immoral influences and into whose hands a publication of this sort may fall. The Hicklin test postulated that a publication has to be judged for obscenity based on isolated passages of a work, considered out of context and judged by their apparent influence on the most susceptible readers, such as children or weak-minded adults. However, this test was later rejected by most of the jurisdictions. There are many judgments where it was stipulated by the Indian courts that obscenity has to be judged in the context of contemporary social mores, the current social moral attitude of the community, and the prevalent norms of acceptability, susceptibility of the community. In relation to matters in issue, for example in Ranjit D. Udeshi, Chandrakant Kalyandas Kakodar, etc., these judgments indicated that the concept of obscenity would change with the passage of time, and what might have been obscene at one point of time would not be considered as obscene at a later period. This came to be known as the Community Standards Test. In Bobby Art International versus Ompal Singh, the court upholding the Community Standard Test held that the complete message and context of the objectionable scene, film, picture, etc. needs to be examined in order to find out whether the alleged material is obscene or not. So yeah, this is the end of passage 2. Again, undertake the same exercise. Go back, read the passage at your own pace and cull out the important points. And after you're done, let's compare them to the ones which I have culled out. So moving on to the important points. The first one is that the Hicklin test postulated that a publication, that is the Hicklin test basically means that a publication has to be judged for obscenity based on isolated passages of work, and it is the context does not have to be seen, and the effect that such a publication will have on the most susceptible reader, that is the like people like children, on which it can have the most impression, you will see whether it will be obscene for them or not. Whereas the community test says that the entire context behind the messages etc. needs to be examined, and currently the community test is the law of the land. So these are the important points. Let's go to looking at the questions. The first question: a daily newspaper called Ramanand Bazar Patrika, having a wide circulation in Anand Nagar, published on 1st July 2019 an article with a picture of Boris Becker, a world-renowned tennis player, posing nude with his dark-skinned fiancée by the name Barbara Feltis, a film actress, which was photographed by none other than her father. The article states that in an interview, both Boris Becker and Barbara Feltis spoke freely about their engagement, their lives and future plans, and the message that they wanted to convey to the people at large for posing to such a photograph. The article pictures Boris Becker as a strident protester of the pernicious practice of apartheid. Further, it was stated that the purpose of the photograph was also to signify that the love champions over hatred. Now, will the alleged picture classify as an obscene material in India? A. No. According to the Hicklin test, it will not classify as obscene. Option B. Yes, according to the community standards test, the picture will classify as obscene. Option C. No, according to the community standards test, the picture will not classify as obscene. And option D, both A and C. Now again, just look at the important points, and this is an easy question. Attend the answer and then let's compare them to the one which I have, which is the correct answer. So the correct answer in this question is option C, because the passage said that the Hicklin test, you don't see the context. Without seeing the context, the picture, nude pictures are obscene if you don't know the context, and because of so that is why A is not the correct option. And if you apply the community standards test, then you have to see the context, and in the context there is an explanation for clicking the nude picture etc. That is why, as per option C, the picture will not classify as obscene. So let's move on to the next question. The difference between Hicklin test and community standards test is: A. The former focuses on the susceptibility of the minds of individuals to get corrupted, while the latter hinges upon the context, intended meaning, and the contemporaneous social cultural environment of the society. B. As per the Hicklin test, a nude picture of a woman per se can be obscene, while as per the latter, the picture should be suggestive of depraved mind and designed to excite sexual passion in persons who are likely to see it. Option C. The former considers obscenity as a changing concept while with changing times, while the latter does not. Or option D, all of the above. So here again, if you look at the important points, go back to what Hicklin test is, just read what is the community test, which we culled out in the important points, and the correct option is, just attempt the answer. The correct option is option A. Here you might have been confused between, you might have been believed that option B is also correct, but if you see the options, it is A for sure is correct, right? Because A says that Hicklin test focuses on the individuals, whereas community standards test talks about the context. So A is 100% correct. B may be correct, but there is not an option that both A and B are correct. So there you look for the most correct option, because C is 100% not correct, because it says that Hicklin test talks of obscenity as a changing concept, whereas the passage clearly says that it does not. It is only the community standards test which considers obscenity as a changing concept. This is why, because there is no option that both A and B are correct, and there is only option D which says all of the above are correct, and you know 100% that option C is not correct. That is why you have to choose between A and B. and between A and B, look at the most correct option, and the most correct option is option A. Hence option A is the correct option. The next question, the issue of obscenity is fundamentally related to which of the following? A, the freedom of religion of an individual. B, the freedom of speech and expression of an individual. C, right to privacy of an individual. Or option D, all of the above. So yeah, here the correct option is just attempted. The correct option is option B, because passage tells us test for obscenities are for judging a publication, and as you know, the right to publish something is a part of a freedom of speech and expression. So that is why option B is the correct option. So let's go to the next question. Now consider the following situations and choose the correct option as per the Hicklin's test. So remember, the question asks you to judge as per the Hicklin's test. Option 1, a movie scene where there are rows of Jewish naked men and women shown frontally being led into the gas chambers of Nazi concentration camp. Not only are they about to die, but they are stripped of their basic dignity in the last moments of their life. Option 2, the controversial movie scene of Phulan Devi, the bandit queen, where she is paraded naked and made to draw water from the well within the circle of 100 men. Option A, 1 is obscene but 2 is not. Option B, 2 is obscene but 1 is not. C, both 1 and 2 are obscene. And D, neither 1 and 2 are obscene. So here again, look at the Hicklin test, then attempt the correct option. So if you read the Hicklin test, it told you that Hicklin test does not look at the context. Hicklin test will look at one image, and if that image can affect any person, the most susceptible mind, that is if it can have an impression on a child, then it will be obscene. So hence the correct option is option C, because in both the options there was nudity, and you don't care about the context at all. You don't care, as per the Hicklin test, you don't care about the concept. You don't care behind the message which is being shown in the movies. You only care about the image. Hence the image has the capability of being obscene. Thus option C is the correct option, and both 1 and 2 are obscene. The next question is, an activist, while being semi-nude, allowed her body to be used as a canvas to paint on by her 2 minor children who were properly clothed. Now she uploaded this video of hers on an online platform with a message that she intends to normalize the female form for her children and not allow distorted ideas about sexuality to pervade their mind. As an advocate who sees this video registers a case of obscenity against her. Now, is this a case of obscenity as per the community standards test? A, this is a pure case of obscenity as she is spreading it. B, this is a pure case of obscenity as well as child pornography, as the children were exposed to nudity. C, this is not a case of obscenity because as per the community standards test, the video must not be seen in isolation but in the contextual setup of the message that the activist has put on the normalization of a female sexuality. D, this is a case of obscenity as per the community standards test as the whole video was blatantly obscene. So if you look at the community standards test which they have said, the correct option is only one. The correct option is option C, because the other option do not do not apply the community standards test at all. They don't talk about the context which is behind it. So that is why option C is correct. And so here, if you are aware, this is a very recent case which actually went up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court in fact said that it is obscene, and they refused to quash the FIR basically. So here this is where, and when there was a challenge against the CLAT 2020, the lawyer for the CLAT 2020 petitioner pointed to this question, and the answer, they said it is wrong, right? But this is what I mean, where you don't look, while looking at the legal reasoning sections, do not apply any of your pre-existing knowledge. You should not have, if even if you were well read, you were aware that this case actually happened and what the Supreme Court held, that is not relevant to what is given in the passage. The passage is giving you two tests, and you independently apply those tests and look at the most correct option which is given to you, right? And here the most correct option is option C. So even though currently, as per the Supreme Court held differently, but as per the passage, the correct option is still option C.